Public relations often uses the metaphor of warfare as a way of characterizing what it's doing. For example, Robert Dillenschneider, who's the former CEO of Hill & Knowlton, the world's largest PR firm until recently, is quoted as saying, in his own book, as saying that the military is a role model for the business world.
In an information age, where when you're talking about fighting an information war, you're no longer dealing with machines. What's important is no longer the hardware. You're not really even interested. It's not important what happens to the body. It's not important what roads you control, and eventually moving your troops into the capital city. What information warfare really is about is a battle for the mind. In one sense, it's a move from warfare based on hardware to warfare based on software, if you like.
So again, this metaphor, this notion that you're collecting this information in order to control a target population with which you're at war is something that recurs over and over again.
Psychographics is a term that's increasingly used in public opinion research, and what psychographics purports to describe are like-minded attitudes that are based often on like-minded belief systems or values of individuals, and that if you understand those attitudes and the value systems that they're based on, you can categorize people around them as being this kind of an individual or that kind of an individual, and often will attach fairly fancy kind of names, descriptive names to those kinds of groups that try to depict what it is they seem to think or believe, and the ways they act and behave.
Basically, these focus groups is kind of a hybrid between opinion polling and some kind of group therapy.
And the public opinion research comes in providing some of that knowledge base to base communications upon. Consumers think this way about product X, voters think that way about politician Y. We go on and understand some of that, why it is we think they might think the way they do, and that information then becomes part of what goes into the development of strategy, the development of messages, the development of tactics, all of which then is handed off to the communications and public relations people.
The point here is that with these data maps, you are allowed to be increasingly precise about who it is you are targeting for your message.
But you can even afford to see a dip in your public opinion surveying, as long as by the time the next election rolls around, you can figure out a way to resurrect your candidate's image, repackage that candidate, resell it, and win another election. The 20th century has been characterized by three developments of great political importance: the growth of democracy, the growth of corporate power, and the growth of corporate propaganda as a means of protecting corporate power against democracy.
I recently gave a talk in Montebello, and I was talking to a member of the, really what I would not call the corporate elite, but the corporate political bureaucratic media elite in this country. He said to me in a kind of smug way, he said, I used to think that Canada was run by 200 of us families, but really in the last year, I think it's really maybe 100 of us families are running this country. And it sort of chilled my body.
When people have power and they have money that comes with power, not their own money, but the money of the structure, then there is a great tendency to want to arrange things the way you would like to have them arranged.
The public's agenda is dominated by emotional idealistic values like freedom, or a healthy population, or a clean environment, or security and safety, or integrity. All those kinds of nice sorts of emotional idealistic values. At the bottom of the public's list of the 22 values we looked at were things like prosperity, competitiveness, and at the very bottom of the list, minimal government intrusions, which I thought was interesting. Then we went and asked the same question of the senior decision-making elites in Canada, the people who are the CEOs of the biggest companies in Canada, the people who are the deputy ministers in the provincial and federal governments, as well as some of the elected officials. And we were expecting you'd get different results, but we were struck by just how big the gap was. First of all, not only were the values all much less intensely rated by the elite, but there was a qualitative flip, such that the values which were most important for the general public actually were the least important, and vice versa. So, for example, at the top of the decision makers list were competitiveness and prosperity, and minimal government wasn't far off as well. And so we thought, well, gee, maybe that's one of the reasons that you see the public's holding governments and institutions and big business in such low regard, is you have a fundamental normative rupture. The basic values, why they think it should be there in the first place, the telos for government, is misunderstood by the people running the show.